At 75 years old, Tom Petersson, the legendary bassist of Cheap Trick, faces a heartbreaking reality that few ever imagined. Once the driving force behind one of rock's most iconic bands, Tom now lives in the shadow of his declining health, the scars of a life on the road, and the haunting question of whether the world truly gave him the recognition he deserved. Fans remember him as the pioneer of the 12-string bass, a man whose sound reshaped rock forever. Yet today, his story carries more pain than glory. What makes this tragedy even more difficult to grasp is the contrast between Tom's larger-than-life stage persona and the fragile man he has become. He was the rock star who inspired millions, the quiet genius behind Cheap Trick's unique sound, but beneath the fame and music was a man battling personal demons, health crises, and the crushing reality of being forgotten by an industry that once celebrated him. This is the heartbreaking truth of Tom Petersson at 75. In the early 1970s, Tom Petersson helped form Cheap Trick, alongside Rick Nielsen, Robin Zander, and Bunny Carlos. While most bassists of the era played in the background, Tom carved out a unique place in rock history by embracing a new invention, the 12-string bass. His thunderous, textured sound became the backbone of Cheap Trick's identity, pushing the band into a league of their own. Fans were mesmerized by the energy Tom brought to the stage, not just as a musician, but as an innovator who dared to redefine what rock bass could be. By the late 1970s, Cheap Trick exploded into the mainstream with At Budokan, a live album that remains one of the greatest in rock history. Tom's bass lines powered anthems like I Want You to Want Me and Surrender, securing his place among the most respected musicians of his generation. But while success seemed limitless, few could see the personal costs Tom would begin to pay for a life devoted entirely to music. As Cheap Trick rose to stardom, Tom found himself thrust into a world of excess, touring endlessly, dealing with record labels, and facing the pressures of fame. The rock and roll lifestyle came with temptations and struggles that often pushed him to the edge. He was admired for his quiet, enigmatic personality on stage, but behind the scenes, Tom wrestled with exhaustion, strained relationships, and the difficulty of balancing music with personal life. Despite being a founding member, Tom often felt overshadowed by the band's frontmen. Rick Nielsen's flamboyant guitar work and Robin Zander's charismatic vocals drew the spotlight, while Tom, the backbone of the group, remained in the shadows. For a man who had revolutionized the bass guitar, the lack of recognition was a quiet wound that never healed. And as the years wore on, that wound grew deeper. In the early 1980s, Tom shocked fans by leaving Cheap Trick at the height of their fame. Burned out from the relentless cycle of touring and disillusioned with the band's direction, he made the painful choice to walk away from the project he helped build. For many, it was unthinkable. Cheap Trick without Tom Petersson simply didn't feel complete. But even outside the band, Tom struggled to find his footing. He tried new projects, collaborated with other artists, and experimented with his sound, yet none reached the heights of Cheap Trick's success. By the late 1980s, he found his way back to the group, rejoining with a renewed sense of purpose. Still, that hiatus left scars, both in his career trajectory and in his personal battles with identity and belonging. Decades of life on the road began to take their toll on Tom's body and mind. The endless touring schedules, sleepless nights, and physical demands of performing left him drained. Unlike many rock stars who thrived on the chaos, Tom's quieter nature made it harder for him to endure the nonstop pressures. The strain began to show in his health, though he rarely spoke about it publicly. As the years turned into decades, Tom watched his peers struggle with similar issues: substance abuse, broken marriages, failing health. He managed to avoid some of the more destructive pitfalls of fame, but he was not immune to the price of rock and roll. By his 60s, Tom's body was already showing signs of wear, and the tragedy of what was coming next would change his life forever. In 2021, fans were stunned when news broke that Tom had undergone emergency open-heart surgery. The bassist who once seemed unshakable, a rock innovator who could command entire arenas with his presence, was suddenly fragile and vulnerable. The surgery saved his life, but it also marked the beginning of a long and difficult recovery that would change how Tom lived and played forever. Tom later admitted the ordeal had shaken him to his core. For the first time, he was forced to face his mortality head-on. Playing the 12-string bass, which required immense physical strength, became harder than ever. Cheap Trick fans rallied around him, but it was clear that the Tom Petersson who once redefined the sound of rock would never again perform with the same fire and stamina. The health crisis brought more than physical challenges. It also placed financial and emotional strain on Tom and his family. The medical expenses piled up, and though Cheap Trick had found commercial success, the wealth wasn't as vast as people assumed. Unlike many rock legends, Tom never lived in extravagant luxury, and the sudden costs of care weighed heavily on him. Emotionally, the surgery left him in a constant state of uncertainty. Would he be able to perform again? Would his career, built over 50 years, suddenly end? For a man whose identity was inseparable from his music, these questions were devastating. The tragedy wasn't just in his failing health, but in the crushing fear of losing the one thing that had defined his entire life: his role as a musician. As years passed, another tragedy became clear. Tom's contributions to rock history were slowly being forgotten. While his bandmates often received recognition, Tom's pioneering work with the 12-string bass rarely got the credit it deserved. Younger fans remembered Cheap Trick's catchy hits, but many didn't realize how much of their signature sound was rooted in Tom's vision and creativity. For Tom, this quiet erasure was deeply painful. He had spent his life pushing the boundaries of music, yet his name was too often left out of the conversation when talking about rock's greatest innovators. The tragedy of being overlooked, of being remembered as just a bassist, weighed on him heavily, even as he continued to play for loyal fans who never forgot. Beyond the stage, Tom faced personal struggles that added to the heartbreak of his story. Like many musicians, his career placed enormous strain on his personal relationships. Balancing family life with the demands of touring was nearly impossible, and though he loved his wife and children deeply, the pressures often pulled him in opposite directions. He also struggled with the mental and emotional toll of aging in the music industry. Rock is a young man's game, and for someone like Tom, once idolized for his energy and style, watching the years strip away his vitality was deeply painful. The tragedy wasn't just physical decline, but the emotional battle of accepting that time had caught up with him. By 2025, Tom Petersson lives a quieter life, spending much of his time away from the spotlight. While he still appears with Cheap Trick occasionally, his performances are fewer, and his health remains fragile. Fans who see him often note how frail he looks compared to the powerhouse of his youth. It's a heartbreaking reminder that even legends are not invincible. Still, Tom has not lost everything. He finds comfort in his family, his faith, and the small joys of everyday life. Though the stage no longer defines him, Tom has embraced a slower existence, cherishing the time he has left. His story is no longer about fame or innovation, but about survival and acceptance in the face of heartbreak. Despite the tragedies, Tom Petersson's legacy remains unshakable. His 12-string bass revolutionized the role of bass in rock music, inspiring countless musicians to think bigger and bolder. Cheap Trick may not always be mentioned in the same breath as Led Zeppelin or the Rolling Stones, but their influence is undeniable, and Tom was at the heart of it. At 75, his life is a testament to both the fragility and the resilience of the human spirit. The tragedy of Tom Petersson lies not only in his health struggles and fading recognition, but also in the reminder that even those who shaped history can be forgotten too soon. Yet for those who truly know his story, Tom remains more than a rock star. He is a survivor, a fighter, and an innovator whose music will live on long after the man is gone.